Hey class, hope everybody had a great weekend. We're going to talk about volume today. So we're going to start with a quick video, and then after that what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some different ways for you to figure out volume, and then we're going to talk about why you need to know about volume to work in a bake shop or in a kitchen of any sort. Okay, so you guys ready to watch the video? Here we go.
On Grandma's face when she sees how we made a cake on our own. I don't like the sound of that. Me neither. Is it supposed to be doing that? What was that? Sounds like a moose trying to sing. Maybe it's alfalfa. Come on, let's go check it out. Take cover!
Oh my goodness, what happened?
Guess that means the cake's ready.
So does anybody know what movie that was? Yeah?
Little Rascals.
And why do you think that we looked at that part of the movie in particular today?
How to make a cake.
How to make a cake? Now we're talking about volume, so why do you think we picked that clip? Jack?
To learn about the volume of a cake.
To learn about volume. So what happened? What was wrong in the oven? What happened in the oven?
A growing blob came out, and then it went boom.
So was there too little in the oven, or was there too much in the oven?
Too much.
So we've been talking in the last couple classes about what we need to do conversions to change the yield. So that's what happens if you don't make the correct calculations. You can have a big mess like that. Maybe not as bad as the Little Rascals, but maybe getting close. So we talked about ingredients, scaling recipes. So today we're going to talk about the volume of pans and why you need to know the volume of a pan. Okay?
Yeah.
So there's two ways that you can figure out volume. Can anybody describe to me, how would you describe volume to, say, a 6-year-old? Yes.
It's not the type of volume of a radio. It is how much water fills up a container.
So it's how much something is filled up.
Yeah.
That's right. Or how much space something takes up. Is that right?
Yep.
Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
So volume is how much space. So volume is space, right? And what kind of measurement do we use to figure out volume? Henry?
To use liters.
Liters? Yes, liters is the exact measurement that you use for calculating volume. In liters. Okay? So there's two ways to figure out the volume. So let's take this little pan here. So there's two ways to figure out a volume. There's the formula, so you have to figure out what the formula is, you do all your measurements, and then it's a calculation. So there's 3 things that you have to measure on a container to figure out what the volume. Do you guys know what that it would be? Okay, so there's the length times width, times what do you think the last one is? So we know this, and if we know this, what else do we need to know?
Depth.
That's right. Okay, so if you take a measurement of this, a measurement of this, and a measurement of this, and you multiply them all together,
You get the formula.
that will give you the volume. Okay? So I think there's a tape measure on the table there. Can you guys give me the measurements of the, I will take the length first, Jack, please.
5 inches.
So 5 inches. And the width next, please.
3.
3. And what's the depth?
2.
So it could either be the depth, so how deep it is, or how tall it is. So either the depth or the height, right? And the depth you said is 2?
2. Yep.
So what's 5 times 3 times 2?
30.
That's right. So 30, but then you're also multiplying your inches. So that's 30 square inches. Okay. Cubic inches. Square inches is just 2-dimensional. When you know the depth, it's 3-dimensional. So it's 30 square inches. But that doesn't really help you. Like, you don't know, that answer doesn't help you in the kitchen, right? So what you need to know in the kitchen is how many mils, how many liters that container holds. So here's another easy way, using water and a measuring cup to figure out what the volume of this container is. So what do you think we have to do with these 3 things to figure out how much the volume is?
Pour the water into there and see and fill it up, and then fill this up until it's full and see where it is on there.
You got one part of that right. Kind of switch around the order that you would do it. You're trying to figure out how much goes in there.
Pour the water into here, then pour it in there and see how much there is.
Exactly. Henry, do you want to help me pour this? Okay, so we got that full, and then we're going to pour it in here. Do you think it's going to fit?
It looks like it.
Okay, and then as we measure, we always keep it flat, and we put our eye level down to see how much it is. How many milliliters are in there, Jack?
It's 300 and then 3.5.
That would be about 325 milliliters that goes in that container. Do you think that's an easier number to use in the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay. So what does that tell you?
It tells you how much you can fit in there
That's right.
without it growing big like it did in the
That's
little
exactly
recipes.
right. And it maybe depends on what kind of recipe that you're going to put in there, how much you can fill it. So if it's a cake recipe, does a cake recipe stay flat all the time, or does it get bigger?
It gets bigger.
So are you going to want to fill it right to the top?
No.
Where are you going to want to fill it to?
Halfway.
That's right. So what does that tell you then?
It means that you only want to use 100 and
You only want to use about half of this.
yeah, which
You only want your container about half full. Okay? So that means if you have a recipe that the batter, say we're making a little banana bread, okay? And your banana bread recipe says the batter makes 500 milliliters. Are you going to be able to fit it in that container? No, why not?
because it's only 325 mils.
But you don't even want to put 325 mils in there, do you?
No.
You want to put less than that.
Yes, you do.
So how many of those containers do you think you're going to need?
5 at least.
Probably about 3. Probably about 3 of those containers. Okay? So can you see what I mean by why do you need to know volume? Why do you need to understand what volume means in a kitchen?
Yes, definitely.
And why do you think you need to know what the volume is?
So you don't have an incident and you can make them taste as good as they can be.
That's right. So when you have lots of different pans, so for example, the volume of this pan is very, very close to the volume of this pan, okay? If we were to measure it, we could see how close they were. But what's important to know is, even though they hold the same volume,
It doesn't mean it has to be the same shape.
well, they're not the same shape, but if they're not the same shape, what else does that mean?
They don't have the same depth, width, and
That's right. So what's gonna happen when you try to bake the same batter in this container versus this container?
it's going to end up differently.
Well, it's what they're maybe gonna take longer to cook. Maybe the bottom will be too well done before the top gets cooked. It depends on what you're gonna put in the pan, right? Like what do you think you would use this pan for, Henry?
Cakes.
You're right, cakes. Would you make a cake in this pan?
No,
No. What would you make in this pan?
like banana bread and poppy seed loaf. maybe?
Loaves, any kind of loaf would go in there, okay?
Not cookies.
Not cookies. So I have another pan. So these pans look like they're really close in size.
That one's a bit fatter than
Okay, so we know that this one is how many mils?
320.
That's right.
mils.
Okay. So can you guys use the equipment we have here to figure out how many mils goes in this container?
Whoa.
500.
And you even spilled a bit there, so maybe even a bit more than 500. So even though they look pretty close,
It doesn't mean it's the same.
it doesn't mean it's the same. So you need to know what to make the right choice about your pans.
The volume.
That's right. So you need to know the volume of your pan, and you need to know the volume of what else?
And what you're putting in it.
That's right. So the volume of the recipe. So if you want to make a big batch of something, you can't necessarily just make the container it goes in twice as big, right? You might have to find 2 pans the same size and split the batter. Does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about today? Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you. Okay, so your homework for this time is to go over, usually there's charts, okay? It's not something that you have to have memorized about, what the volume of pans are. There's lots of charts. Like this type of pan is a pretty standard size. You're gonna be able to look on a chart, but sometimes you have a pan that has no markings on the bottom, doesn't tell you, you don't have a tape measure. So what can you go back and do to figure out the volume of a pan that you don't know anything about?
Get a ruler and then measure it like we just did.
And what's the other thing? What's the easier thing to do in the kitchen?
What we just did, fill it up and then put it in a measuring thing.
That's right. And then what could you do so you don't have to do that the next time you pick up that pan?
Write it down.
Write it down
Like I've been
somewhere.
writing it down.
That's
for a little
right.
bit.
That's right. Okay, so Again, next class, we're gonna talk again some more about changing recipes, changing yields, you know, increasing, decreasing, and we'll maybe talk about dealing with oven temperature and all of those kinds of things and the other things that you need to think about when you're changing how much a recipe makes, if you're doubling it or halving it. Okay, and as always, if you have any questions, you have my email address and my office hours, so you can get back to me, okay? Okay, happy baking, everybody. Have a great week.